came here with visit. Right now we are at Kremlin and surrounded by some historical places, some churches. We are going to show you what we saw in Moscow in general and invite you to watch with us. From Canada to Russia. The idea of such a trip these days may seem unusual to some, but I really wanted to wish my mom a happy birthday. This is why we are here in Moscow. We will walk and drive through protected and familiar corners where each place is a witness to bright destinies and turning points. The ancient city has always been a heaven for history buffs. The red square towers of the Kremlin occupy the site of Moscow. The capital is bursting with energy as factories and warehouses are converted into art galleries and post-industrial nightclubs. Parks are overrun with healthy, active sporty types, and chiefs experiment with their own interpretation of international cooking. Let's see all of it. Our journey begins with a trip to Sherbinka district to the apartment of the good sorceress and my mom.
Просят снимать, вот я здесь. А, здесь, оказывается, чаевые надо кидать, чтобы это...
Moscow is the largest city in Russia by population, and this is clearly visible. Today's Moscow is a modern metropolis, the streets of which are crowded with cars, people, and, of course, the monuments until late at night. For those who came here for a short visit, it's good to start getting acquainted with the city from the city center. Although Vladimir Ulyanov Lenin requested that he be buried beside his mom in St. Petersburg, he still lies in state at the foot of the Kremlin wall. A paddy wagon is nearby, just in case. Memorial, the tomb of the unknown soldier, contains the remains of one soldier who died in December 1941. Even the international relationships deteriorate lately, Moscow keeps getting cooler, more cosmopolitan, and more creative. Even though you can hear different languages in Moscow, the Russian remains number one. More than 258 million people in the world speak Russian. But guess and put it in the comments what is the second place in terms of proficiency after Russian in Moscow. Check yourself. And if you wrote English, you were correct. Turning off the main highways of the city, the Moscow of yesteryear opens before our eyes. Right now we are at the intersection of Makhovaya and Tverskaya streets, opposite the National Hotel, a building which remembers a huge historical past. Here, Moscow reminds me of a favorite Soviet-era salad, Olivia. Here, the cubes of buildings from different areas are carefully mixed. What can we say? The architects try to ensure the majesty, luxury, and pomp of the city. The view on Alexander Garden. The Moscow Kremlin wall is a defensive wall that surrounds the Moscow Kremlin. Kiev and Minsk are still aligned, but only here, along the wall, with a five-pointed star. Waiting of the Guard of Honor changing ceremony, people having their phone ready to get the videos as a proof of being here in the special moment. Lenin State Library of the USSR, and since January 22, 1992, it is Russian State Library. This is Dostoevsky monument. Well, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, contrary to myths, never visited the library. Why, you ask? It is because he was busy with Russian Revolution. We are heading to the Moscow Kremlin museums. There is a monstrous Tsar cannon. It is too big to serve the intended purpose, so that's why it's called the most peaceful arms ever. I ask you to like this video, as this simple movement of yours will help us a lot. Better yet, subscribe to the channel. This way you can be regularly notified of new videos. Assumption Cathedral and Ivan the Great Bell Tower. By overcoming some 137 steps, you can be rewarded super sweeping vistas. We are direct ourselves in the most intriguing treasures of the Armory. The Armory is chock full of precious metalworks and jewelry, armor and weapons, gowns and crowns, carriages and sledges. If it happened to wear uncomfortable shoes somehow, please note that Catherine II had it even worse situation, because there wasn't right or left shoe then. Photography and video is not permitted inside of the Armory, in order to preserve exhibition. Alright, we are on a lunch break. Metro. The Moscow Metro, it is also called subway or underground, pick up the correct English version, which works for you, was opened in 1935. It is easiest, quickest and cheapest way getting around Moscow. Plus, many of the elegant stations are marble-faced, frescoed, gilded works of art. There are more than 150 stations there. Now we are near at Patriarch's Ponds, a truly unique place. It is hard back to Soviet days when the parks were populated with children and babushki. This is how old ladies called here. The Master and Margarita is a novel by Mikhail Bulgakov, a Russian author. It has been called one of the masterpieces of the 20th century. Patriarch ponds were immortalized by writer Mikhail Bulgakov, who had the devil appear here in The Master and Margarita. Another famous author, Ivan Andreevich Krylov, is remembered here by his characters. Krylov, Russia's best-known fabulist and probably the most epigrammatic of all Russian authors. Triumfalnaya Square. It is located between Boulevard Ring and Garden Ring, known as the Golden Mile. This is the most rich neighborhood in Moscow. Why? Because they can reach everything. Look how many theaters are here. Gorky Park. Moscow's main city gateway is not your conventional expanse of nature preserves deep inside an urban jungle. Its mission is to mix leisure and culture in equal proportions. Designed in 1920s by avant-garde architect Konstantin Melnikov as a piece of communist utopia, these days it showcases the enlightened transformation Moscow underground in recent years. Moscow is the Putin-friendly city. However, Lenin remains alive here too. Leninsky Prospekt or Leninsky Avenue is the second widest street in Moscow after Leningradsky Avenue. Leninsky Prospekt is also a home for some universities. There is a place in Moscow that almost every tourist flocks to visit, and this is the Tretyakov Gallery. To be as consistent as possible, we will visit it too. On the way to the gallery, we are passing the temple of the Holy Martyr Clement, Pope of Rome. In a few meters from the gallery, in the small Shmilov Square, there is a fountain called Inspiration. The Tretyakov Gallery is the leading repository of Russian fine art in the world. And although city idols do not last forever, there are names that will remain in Moscow forever. This is, first of all, Pavel Mikhailovich Tretyakov. He did everything to ensure that his brainchild became a real pearl of the capital. His younger brother Sergei was his main support and a partner in this field. Tretyakov personally showed his paintings only to friends, but once the Russian Emperor Alexander III arrived, he came only with his family and his brother's family. Alexander knew the collector well. The emperor himself collected paintings too, and once at an exhibition he was unable to purchase a single work he liked. They had already been bought by a Moscow collector. I wanted to buy it, but the merchant took everything from me, the emperor said. From that time on, it was officially prohibited to sell paintings at the exhibitions before the king's visit. Well, Tretyakov adapted to buying paintings even earlier in the studios row.
Ну вот многие так думают. Но на самом деле столько разных средств выяснить.
This portrait of Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin by Kipriansky hangs in Poet's Home. Sakhalin restaurant.
Надо ходить в Сергеевича Горби, это он тебе мстит. В моих детях отрывается.
If you ask me when is the best time to visit Moscow, my answer would be at the lunchtime.
Смотри, какой гаспач. Вот спасибо.
Как красиво.
Если ешь в первый раз, то загадывай желание. И запиваешь белым вином.
Yeah, the food won't eat itself, but let's not disturb.
Все верно. Спасибо.
In this warm moment, this is an opportunity to me to thank Alexander and Natalia for their hospitality.
Я с Руфой делюсь.
Я?
Руфа, учись, он вчера давно продается.
Это для вас.
Вот эти девушки.
Конечно, конечно.
Теперь как брод.
We are again in Bulgakov's Moscow. Having walked along the Patriarch's ponds, where the heroes of Master and Margarita argued, we are now in the Bulgakov's Museum. Mikhail Bulgakov was a Soviet-era novelist who was labeled a counter-revolutionary and censored throughout his life. His most celebrated novels were published posthumously, earning him a sort of cult following in the late Soviet period. Bulgakov is an author of The Master and Margarita, Heart of a Dog, and many other novels.
Это посмертная маска Булгакова. Это все создано по его произведению «Мастер и Маргарита». Как с этой стороны, так вот сзади вас сюжет. Никогда не разговаривать с неизвестными, с незнакомцами.
The famous bed apartment from the novel The Master and Margarita is located right there, next to the notary's apartment. Just in case.
Видишь, мы опоздали, мы еще ничего не.
After that, our hard-working legs are bringing us to the Great Ascension Church. The church where Alexander Pushkin and the girl Natalia Goncharova were married in 1831.
Ты вспомнишь мои, если только приедешь и увидишь хоть раз лучший город земли. Хочу вас слышать! Эй!
Arbat, it is a symbol of old Moscow and the most famous street in the city. The name of Arbat probably came from the Arabic word Arbat, which means suburb. Arbat is rich with culture. Moscow's most famous street, Улица Arbat, is something of an art market, complete with portraits of painters and poets.
На 3 части. По-моему, ее есть. Да-да.
There are so many signs of Russian culture here. Just some of them are more noticeable than another. The street is lined with theaters, museums, and galleries. The time is passing by very fast, and we are gradually approaching the last day of our Moscow journey. If you want to see a panoramic view of Moscow, the roof of the central children's store is a perfect place then. Central Children's Store, CCS, has been the main children's store in Moscow for 60 years. If you are comfortable with children's scream, you will definitely find an opportunity to enjoy it here. But to be serious, this is a perfect place for children. They can visit Baba Yaga's house. Baba Yaga is enigmatic and ambitious character from Russian folklore. Guess what is favorite Baba Yaga's food? Central Children's Store has the largest mechanical clocks in the world. Lubyanka, the headquarters of the FSB, some sport activities near Red Square. Nikolskaya Street, Nikolskaya улица, is a pedestrian street in the Kitai Gorod of Moscow. It connects Red Square and Lubyanka Square. GUM, the main department store, is not only the main store in Russia, it is also the most expensive one. Well, what I mean, this is the largest shopping mall in Europe. This area has long been for shopping arcades in the 19th century. Today, many stores were closed for the technical reasons. In the 19th century, it was decided to rebuild the dilapidated building. Alexander Pomerantsev designed a Russian revival three-story building with arcades, bridges, crossing, and a glass dome supported by steel trusses. The circular white stone construction set up on a pedestal in Red Square near St. Basilis Cathedral is known both as the place of execution and also as the place of the Tsars.
Давайте сядем.
Spasskaya Tower was built by the Italian architect Solari. The St. Basilis Cathedral was erected in 16th century at the behest of the Tsar Ivan the Terrible. Meet us in St. Petersburg. Пока!